Welcome to part 2. Now, the truth is, there are some communities in Kenya who look down on the woman. It is mostly a cultural thing, the way they were brought up. For instance, the Maasais, the Kisis, and yes, even in Kirinyaga, there is no shortage of male chauvinists. People whose views on women will never change, no matter how many seminars and training sessions you take them through. You know, there was a day when I was very embarrassed by a certain colleague. We were sent to a certain office to get something done. And we had no idea when we left the office that in that particular office, the decision maker was a woman. And immediately we entered her very impressive office. This colleague of mine, is a Kisi, started this silly laugh of his. You know that laugh of Madarao? That laugh of, how can a woman? How? A woman, how? And I was forced to act very quickly. I just asked him when we were already in the office, please just wait for me outside. And then I made my excuses to this lady. I apologized and turned on my charm. Unfortunately, I saved the situation. But when I left that office, I was livid and asked this guy straight up, do you have daughters? Chris, niko na wasichana. Lakini hao wataolewa tu, hiyo maneno itaishia hapo. What? I go out of my way to tell my small daughters that nothing should be impossible for them to do, or achieve, or accomplish. I am very determined that one day in the future, nobody will ever pull them down just because they're women. Anyway, my point is, we have to accept the very unfortunate situation that in our country, even in this day and age, we have men who have some very backward thinking going on inside their brains, and which is impossible to correct. Whatever you want to say about President Uhuru Kenyatta, one thing that he'll be remembered for are the number of appointments he has made in the cabinet. A historic high by far of women, very competent women in very important positions, cabinet positions. He has shown Kenyans that women can in fact be more competent in some of these positions than men, by far. I think the mistake that has been made in the past is that people have appointed certain women because they are their friends or because they know them. But the president has proved, President Uhuru Kenyatta, that when you appoint according to how competent a person is, a woman can perform much better anytime. Now, I'm assured by my contacts on the ground that the impeachment of Ann Waiguru has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman. And I hope this is true. We will see shortly, I'm sure, and know for sure. And now that you know my views on women, this is the appropriate time to go into that very sensitive topic I promised, where I predicted that the time is coming when very many Kenyan men will have 3, 4 wives or even more. Now, let me start by saying that this has actually happened before in history, where women have approached men and told them, please, I want to be one of your wives. Don't worry about what I eat. Don't worry about what clothes I put on. I just want the name. I want to be called Mrs. You. And I believe it has happened many times before in history. Most notably during wars and conquests. A war can be so devastating on a nation that there are very few men left. Or what happened during the time of King Nebuchadnezzar can happen. You know that famous king made a decree and said that yes, they had conquered the people, but none of his people should dare get married to a woman who is already somebody else's wife. And so you can guess what happened. The women, to protect themselves, from getting married to these heathens, these savages who had invaded them, rushed to get married to their own as a third, fourth, fifth wife, whatever. Because you realize in such instances, the woman didn't have a choice. If a savage with his teeth sticking out and saliva dripping out from the sides of his mouth approached you and said, "You're going to be my wife," a poor lass did not have the option of saying, "I don't think so." And of course, the other instance where it happened was during Great Famine, where people had to survive. You know, for many on this channel, apart from seeing photographs and videos from Ethiopia a few years ago, when there was a famine in that country, children starving, etc., etc., most cannot picture or even begin to understand what a serious shortage of food can result in. Which is exactly where we're headed with this current crisis. The aftermath of the virus crisis will lead us to very serious food shortages worldwide. Last night, I had a statistic that completely blew my mind. It is said that over 60 million Americans have not only lost their livelihoods as a result of this virus crisis, but very shortly they'll be reduced to poverty. Now, think about it. That is America, a very advanced nation where there are many options. If the figure there is well over 60 million, what do you think the figures will be in Black Africa? So picture the following situation. In fact, this has already started unfolding in Kenya. We had a case which was covered on KTN TV, where there was this couple that was hosting quite a number of single mothers, I think 2 or 3, in their tiny house. The unfortunate ladies had been kicked out of their houses because they could no longer pay rent. These virus maneros. And there was no way they could travel up country. Because Nairobi was under lockdown, still is. You can't leave or enter Nairobi. Knowing the way Kenyan men behave, unfortunately, you can imagine what some possible consequences could be. A man could end up with more than one wife. And also unfortunate, you know the way some Kenyan women behave. They have no respect for boundaries. They have no respect for married men. And many of them believe in love. Whatever the consequences. And then we also have many wives who take their husbands for granted. There are many wives in Kenya who don't understand. They have no idea what being a wife really means, what it is. And no, I'm not talking about being a slave to a man. No, I'm just talking about the way a man is wired and the way a wife is supposed to be. You know, these Western cultures have really confused us in Africa. The truth is, the African woman has always been very powerful and influential in the home. The only difference is that now she's getting divorced much more than in the past. And sometimes it is not the man's fault. There are very many long-suffering men in Kenya today, and I know some of them, who stay with women who are supposed to be their wives only because of immense patience and for the sake of the children. Otherwise, staying with some women is just torture. The worst kind of torture you can think of. I think you're now beginning to get a clear picture of how this crazy prediction I made may unfold right before our eyes. Now, before I go, let me tackle some really sensitive issues. As a Christian, The Bible is clear. God's aim, God's intention, Almighty God's intention, right from the beginning of time, was for one man to get married to one woman. That one, there's no doubt. Although we see in the Old Testament some very prominent characters, King David, King Solomon, etc., etc., even Abraham had more than one wife. But there's something else here. Many Kenyan men have a wife and then many other women in secret. That one is called adultery. It is a sin, and there's no argument about that. And you'll agree with me that in many of these instances, the wife already knows that her husband is moving around with other women. But you have another Kenyan man. He has 3 wives, and he has no other women. Incidentally, the law in Kenya was changed recently, I think in 2018, allowing a Kenyan man to marry officially more than one wife. Now, of course, we'll all be very quick to throw barbs at this man with 3 or 4 wives. But is he committing adultery? No, he is not. Anyway, that was just some food for thought for you. Otherwise, I understand and I appreciate this topic I've tried to handle is a no-go zone, highly sensitive. But I still stand by my prediction about what we're going to see in our country at the end of this crisis. In fact, it's already happening. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.